Memories of my high school. Story 1. I should begin by introducing myself. Currently, I am a pharmacy student studying in a certain university here in the Philippines. I would like to share some of my interesting memories back when I was still a high school student. I moved into my high school, let's call it THS. When I was in my first year, I didn't really like it at first. The AC was crap, the teachers didn't seem to be happy with their jobs, and I especially hated the look of our school. It had this vintage Spanish-era architecture, which back then I thought looked very stupid and lame. And then there are the stories surrounding THS. They say that during the Spanish occupation it was once an internment camp for captured Filipino spies and soldiers. The Spaniard soldiers and the friars would put them to chains, molest them, yes, even the men were molested, and torture them by ripping out their bones and fingers one by one until they crack and give out intel. Those who did were sent into the darkness, which I guess is just a euphemism for execution. Then, during the American occupation, it was burned down and they built a school here, which today is now known as THS. However, there have been reports of American teachers and personnel being stalked and even shouted at by ghosts of the dead Filipinos. One guy once hung himself in our school's third-floor bathroom, and if you happened to be inside the first stall nearest the mirror at 6:30 p.m., you would hear his dead corpse slamming into your door. That's just a few of the stories THS has to offer. Of course, being the complete skeptic, I just laughed it off. But of course, since my classmates were studying here since the elementary days, they took it more seriously. They always thought I was insane for not believing in these stories. One afternoon, we were supposed to finish a project to be submitted in 2 days. We were doing it at the back of the main building, so it's much quieter. When 2 of my group mates went to the bathroom, the last one got a call from her mother. She was picking her up. I was the only one left alone with our project. We were making a papier-mâché pyramid. 30 minutes passed and my 2 group mates were still not back. I didn't think that they ditched me because they left their bags with me. So I decided to go back to the main building and check up on them. The halls were quiet as the classes were finished for the day. I searched for them at the first floor, but there was no one there. At this point, I'm starting to get upset, so I call out their names, yelling for them to stop playing whatever prank they're doing. Footsteps start echoing through the hall, so I ran for its source, something I never should have done. I bumped into a tall man wearing a dirty white shirt. I fell onto the floor, dizzy from the pain. When I stood up, my heart dropped like a stone. The man was in his 40s, at least. Well, at least I thought so, because his face was so badly burnt I couldn't tell much. It was so badly burnt that all of his upper lip was gone. Nothing but bubbling and sizzling mess left on his face, making him look like his mouth was permanently frozen in a grotesque frown. His clothes didn't seem to be burned, which was odd enough. But what disturbed me the most was his hands. None of them had fingers on them. The stubs that were the reminders of its constantly dripping blood, and the groin region of his pants was bleeding as well. His toes were half gone, exposing white bones and joints. He pointed his stubby, bleeding hand at me. "Please, let me out," he croaked in Tagalog. "I told you we're the rebels. Please, please let me out. Please let me out to be with my family. Please. You promised. You promised," he roared. At this point, I was coming so close to shitting myself. The smell of burning flesh, fresh blood, is too sickening. It was a miracle I didn't throw up. Then the man looked down at me and let out a scream of horror. "No! You! In the dark! No, no, no!" He then writhed his body on the floor, like someone was electrocuting him. His mouth bubbled, mixing blood with saliva. The ground beneath him began to boil, slowly melting down, the cement bubbling and jutting out from behind him. Stubby little sticks showing. Only when one of them popped out, exposing a bone, did I realize it was fingers. The man howled in agony as more and more fingers jutted out from the ground. At this point, I somehow gathered the will to run away. I didn't make it to the exit when I tripped and fell to the ground, shattered and crumbled, with sharp debris of cement scratching my hands. I blacked out, the voice of the screaming man slowly dulling out. When I opened my eyes, my two classmates were staring at me curiously. "Hey, you okay?" one of them asked me. You're crying, and you're screaming in your sleep." It took me a bit before realizing it was all a dream. They say they found me there sleeping heavily. They decided it would be best not to wake me up. It was only when I started crying and screaming that they shook me awake. I sighed in relief. So all of that was just a dream. The tortured man, the fingers from the cement, all of it. Me and my hyperactive imagination. I stood up to help them in towing away our pyramid when I yelled in pain. My palm was stinging with fresh scratches, the exact ones I got when I tripped and fell over in my dream. Story 2. A Family of Ghosts. Here in the Philippines, there can be a lot of folklore and supernatural stories. I don't usually pay much attention to it, but I can tell you that it's real. So when I was 5 years old, my grandmother would find me a very odd child because I would play alone. I always played with the tree. She told me that I always knocked on the tree before I played around it. There was this one time that I asked my grandmother if I could play with the black children inside the tree. My grandmother was so confused that she told my mother about it. So the next day they decided to cut it off. Here in the Philippines, we believe that there are mythical creatures living in gigantic trees called the agta. Since the tree is home, cutting it down would only give you consequences. Luckily, my brother was the one who suffered them. By the time the tree was cut off, my brother's face was sore. It was as if he was in a fight, for no apparent reason at all. Years later, when I was approximately 10 years old, that was when I saw it all start. As far as I can remember, it was 3 a.m. when I woke up and saw a girl looking at me while I slept. She was all dressed in white, but I couldn't see her face because it was all faded. I peed my pants after seeing her. I couldn't move, so I hid in my blanket till I fell back asleep. In the morning, after I told my mother about it, she told me I was crazy, and that was all. And that all of it happened was because I didn't know how to pray. So that was when I decided to never tell my mother again. A few weeks after that, while I was playing Sims, in the middle of the night I can hear footsteps right in our attic, but I didn't mind because I was having too much fun. When it was time to shut down, I swear I saw 2 figures, 2 young boys, to my side. I couldn't move when I saw them, but when I did, I ran to my mother's room and told her about it, and she just told me she had enough of my stories. I tried to forget those 2 boys until one day I was left at home with our house helper. We both slept in the living room, and it was around 2 p.m. She was having sleep paralysis. She saw me sleeping by the couch, and she saw 2 black boys running around the house, playing close to me. When she told me this, I was shaking. I didn't know what to do. It was like they were following me for some reason. Then the day I dreaded the most happened. It was when I experienced sleep paralysis. I was sleeping in my sister's room when all of a sudden I woke up in a sweat. I couldn't move, but I saw something black walking on my side of the bed, whispering words I couldn't understand. I tried to shout, but the more I did, the darker everything got. I tried to move my toes, and that's how it ended. This happened for a few weeks until I turned 17 years old. My father, who doesn't believe in ghosts and the supernatural creatures, talked to a Filipino practitioner who are capable of performing sorcery. Correct me if I'm wrong, but they're kind of psychics. Anyway, moving on. My father asked him about his luck and so on and so forth. He told my father about which child of his was going to get married, that one ends up getting pregnant and whatever. Then my father asked, "Prove to me that this is all real." The practitioner didn't hesitate. He was glad to prove it to my father. He told my father, "You have children, 1 from the other side, 2 children from yours, and 1 adopted child, me. This adopted child of yours talks back to you, right?" My father was shook, but he wasn't convinced yet, so he said, "Yes, but give me more proof." The practitioner said, "You have 2 plants at your house. No matter how you try to weed them, the weeds still grow. And it's been there for years." My dad said yes, but that could be possibly guessed. The practitioner said, "That is your money tree. It has been there for years. Keep it. Keep it to make the money flow." My dad was still not convinced. The practitioner then again told him, "You had adopted a child before, and it died due to hydrocephalus." My dad was shook and tried to stop himself from crying. He said, "Tell me more." "There's a family living in your attic right now. I don't know what they want from you, but they have been there long before you lived there. It is best you respect them." I think I'm going to cut my story here with a quick description. So yes, there is a family of ghosts living in our attic right now. We can still hear footsteps at night. Our doorknobs will always make a sound, and our house helpers always decide to leave us because they can see them as well. Oh, yeah, I forgot to tell you, our house used to be a cornfield. It is said that during World War II, the Japanese used to come here often to rest, until they all died in battle in the cornfield. I don't know what this family wants, but I want to find out why they're still staying. I mean, what do they want? Story 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Hello. My name is Miral. No, that's not my real name. And I live in Manila, Philippines. I'm now 25 years old, living with my girlfriend. Anyway, this is a real story that actually happened to me when I was staying in a house in the province. This experience happened to me when I was 12 years old, right after my grandfather died. My grandfather died of a heart attack, and the whole family was in shock. Well, as for me, I was only 12, and I didn't actually have a close bond with my granddad back when he was alive, so I never actually paid too much attention to his death. Well, before his funeral, we offered a mass and held a small gathering to pay our respects. We celebrated in a small chapel with his casket open in the front of the chapel. Each one of the family members would come up to the casket to see my grandfather for the last time and say their goodbyes. Everyone had come to the casket, and so it was my turn. Filipino children are not actually scared of dead bodies. Maybe it's a cultural thing. I had this habit of knocking on every wood surface that I had touched with my hands. Anyway, while I was looking at my grandfather, who is now lying in an open casket, I was knocking at the bed with a 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Then, after 3 minutes, my auntie noticed what I was doing. She shouted at me and pinched me and told me this old Filipino superstition that when you knock at a casket of a dead body, he will come back to your doorstep and knock at your door. Well, I never actually paid attention to what my aunt had said and continued playing that 1, 2, 3 beat. When we go back to our house with one of my cousins and my parents, it was already around 10 p.m. My parents had gone to sleep early because they were super tired, so my cousin and I decided to watch TV, and that's when things started to happen. At first, we were hearing noises, loud ones, coming from outside, but we didn't pay much attention to it. We just continued watching TV. Then I got really scared when the lights and the TV went on and off. The most horrible and scariest thing is that it had the pattern similar to my knock. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. For about 3 minutes this continued, and I felt really scared, and so did my cousin. After the flickering stopped, someone knocked on our door with the exact 1, 2, 3 beat that I had at the casket. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. I was really scared, but I pulled myself together and found the courage to stand up and look out the window to see who it was. My cousin was next to me when we slowly went to the window and checked. What I saw was something I will never forget. It was an old man wearing a black suit with a little girl holding his hand. Their backs were turned against us. I didn't actually see what they looked like, but I knew that this wasn't my grandfather, and I have no idea who this child is with him. The girl was wearing shabby clothes that I only seen in very old Filipino movies, something like a dress that kids wear during the early 60s. I was so scared that I was unable to move. I can't shout and move away from the window, and I had almost lost my breath when the little girl turned around to look at me. She had no face, no eyes, no mouth, nothing. I will never forget that horrifying sight until I die. At the moment that her face was directed to me, my cousin and I gathered our strength and ran to my parents' room and told them what had happened. They didn't believe us, of course, and told us to go to sleep, which, after a long time, we did. After that night, I was in shock for nearly a week, unable to talk to anyone about the supernatural experience. I just hoped whoever that old man and child were, that they would leave me alone and give me peace. People have told me that it could be possible that other spirits heard me knocking on my grandfather's casket. I really hope not. Kia ora whānau, Grimm here. That was 3 scary short stories written by people from the Philippines. This is the end of our Scary Philippine Encounter Week. Next week, it looks like we are going to be doing, thanks to the poll I put out, stories from New Zealand. I will keep releasing a poll for the next 4 weeks with the same countries for people to vote on which ones they would like to hear from, and then after we get through all 4, I will create another poll. So, for this one, those who made it to the end, please type out the word yes, YES in the comments, capital letters, big, stand out, pop yes, as we made it through another week. And as always, everyone, please be safe wherever you are. Have an amazing night or day. And, as you know, I am Grimm, and I'm, well, signing off.